You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy. And today we're joined again by Patrick Murphy, who is CEO of Ireland South and West Fisheries. Patrick, as you know, is very prominent within the fishing industry here in Ireland, and he would spend a lot of time in Europe going through all the details and the machinations of that are very complex within the fishing industry. And Patrick's here to give us an update on how things are going in Brussels for our fishermen and a bit more as well. So, Patrick, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks, Roisin, for inviting me on. Yeah. So whenever you want me to go, I'll just
Yeah,
give you an update on what's happening.
yeah. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, so we went out to meet our MEPs, our industry, because we're in serious jeopardy of losing it, and people mightn't believe that with the richest fishing grounds, but that is actually what's at stake. We could lose our industry. Ireland would become an island nation with no fishing fleet, and that is a real possibility. The reasons being is that if it's not an industry that people can get into, make a living, they'll just stop, and other countries will come in like they did in the UK and buy up the fishing boats. And that's already happened, and it's happened in Belgium. And the Dutch have come in and bought up nearly half the Belgian fleet. You see
Oh,
the Spanish coming up and buying up the French fleet. We even have some boats in Castletown Bear that are owned by local people, but they're Northern Ireland boats. So this is where things are going. We have a possibility that Iceland will be given access into our waters. And what we give away then is our fish stocks in our waters. And in return, we
right.
get 15% of what Europe gets. So Europe again will get 85% of that deal. And that's what's happening. So we met our MEPs. We told them how stark the situation was. Maira Wash surprised us. She's friends with the commissioner, and she got a meeting as designated. He wasn't the commissioner yet. So I think we got across to them how serious things are, but we have to follow it up. But the other part of the job then is going over to the advisory councils, and in the advisory councils, we meet with the advisors of ICES, who are the International Council for the Exploration of the Seas. These are all our scientists from around the world that take in data, multiple streams of data, feed it into models, and give predictions of what you need to catch for the following year to make sure you don't take too much out of the stock, you damage it. It's called the F range, fishing mortality. And they try and set it, Europe does, at the maximum. So other countries like Norway, like Iceland, Greenland, the Faroes, Russia, UK, and now EU are all sharing a very important stock called mackerel. And
Yeah.
because the Norwegians are taking more, and the Icelandics are taking more, and the Faroes are taking more, than was set out 10 years ago, now their accomplices are the UK. So the fish that they're taking extra, they're now catching that in UK waters. So their justification is very simple. They believe that the fish are in their waters longer than anywhere else, ergo they should be allowed to take more of them. But the complication in that now for the Norwegians is that they did a deal with the UK to catch this fish in UK waters, which would have been the European waters. So that's muddied the waters. But this
That's right.
year, ICES has given a real warning, and they've told all the countries to cut their fish quotas by 22%. That is on the backdrop that there was 5% taken off last year and the year before. And I've asked at councils, me from my organization, is that ICES would be given a task by their clients, which would be any one of the coastal states, or even Europe, or even our own minister, to ask them to do a predictive analysis that if they keep taking the extra amount of fish that they're taking, how long will the stock, and this is important, fall below B-lim? And B-lim is the safe biological limit of the stock before it can recover back. So in other words, like I said, ICES says how much you can take out. That'll recover the stock in the next 12 months. If, however, their analysis shows that the stock doesn't recover to 80 or 95% of the B-lim figure, then they give a zero catch advice. And just to give you an example how serious that is, another fish stock called the Northwest horse mackerel was given a zero catch advice for the last 2 years. In other words, no fishermen are allowed to catch any of the stock because their evaluation said that the stock was slow growing, long living, and ergo the natural mortality was nearly higher than the fishing mortality. So that meant even though the biomass of the stock, the size of the stock was 800,000 tons, they said you're not allowed to take anything from it. Zero. 800,000 tons. You couldn't safely take anything out of that stock to recover it. And there's a benchmark for mackerel. So why I'm telling you this is this reason. Is we're really concerned in Ireland because we've 50% the share of the European quota. We lost 26% of it in the Brexit TCA catching. We've now lost 5%, 5%, and 22% with the scientific advice. So our fishermen are really struggling. But the biggest fear is that if it falls below the safe biological limits of the stocks, there is overfishing going on, but not by us, right? Then the stock will collapse, and this will destroy a lot of family businesses and factories in Ireland. And we're asking for our country to say very simply to the European Union, because Norway is not agreeing to that, they should be told to stay out of Irish waters, and we in return stay out of their waters. Because we get so little. We get a small amount of the Scandinavian herring, and we get a small amount of cod up there. So small, I'm going to tell you the figure. Europe gets 10,000 tons of cod for allowing Norway to come into our waters and other European waters, and we get 300 tons out of that 10,000. Just imagine that. They get to come in and catch 224,000 tons of blue whiting in our waters. And I know these figures seem incredible. They are. But what's happening is that our businesses, our catching fleet, and their processing are literally going to be put out of business because other countries are coming in, taking too much fish, and on the other side, taking too much fish in their own waters. But here's the absolute madness of what I'm talking about. Norway doesn't use the same analogy or the same criteria to evaluate the blue whiting as they do the mackerel. So in other words, if they gave the same evaluation to blue whiting, our quota of 60,000 tons out of 1.4 million tons, right? That's allowed to be caught by ICES advice, would go up to maybe 500,000 tons. So we'd increase our fish using their methodology, I believe, by tenfold, which would mean that we would have one of the biggest fisheries in Europe and we would thrive as a country. So our country should be challenging this. So the common fishery policy, you've heard me saying this is all legalistic terminology that I'm explaining to you. I've tried to bring that into the campaign and the media didn't allow me to talk about it. You can see the amount of knowledge, and I'm giving a very, very common descriptive or an easy descriptive in this. It's a way more complicated. But our politicians don't understand this. Our minister won't listen to us. Our department won't fight us. So we have to go out now trying to set a public campaign for Ireland. And all we want to say to people is this. If you want fish to be caught by Irish people, you need to help us. And I've been doing this for 8 years now. And people are being told, oh no, the fishing industry is grand. We have reports coming from the likes of Bordy's Gowara that on the one hand, they're saying the industry is only contracted 2%, that we're down 2%. Yet in the same report, they're saying that the profitability for the same fleet is minus 82%. How do those figures match up? So we believe that the figures are being manipulated even by our own people in our own country. And as I said, I keep saying this, just to yourselves, any politician, any scientist, anybody on the planet wants to debate me about fisheries in Europe, I have no problem going on any show and I'll debate with them. They might have a greater technical knowledge, but the common sense knowledge is lost. And we, as a country, really are in jeopardy of losing our fishing industry. And that's why I'm delighted to talk to you. But it's the same for our farming communities because it's the same thing is happening. The same laws and regulations that were tried and tested in our fishing industry that are putting us out of business are now being applied to our agricultural policy. And they're changing it from food production and food security, more legislative and environmental. And they're saying, listen, you're not farming right, you're not fishing right. So we're going to make more and more obligations to be set for you. We're not going to increase the price for the food you're producing, but we'll increase the costs. And they're just putting people out of business. It's an easy way of doing it. And look, you see it in the restaurants. They increase the VAT. The rates are increasing. The price of labour, which is right, is increasing. But the customers aren't being asked to pay more for the produce that they're producing. So the sums don't add up. When you see the likes of a bike shed being built for a third of $1 million, a bike shed, and yet a price of a bag of spuds, you can buy a kilo of spuds inside in Dunnes Stores for €1. Like, somebody's cutting somebody here, like. And price of milk, people complain about it. Just think about what it was 10 or 15 years ago, and look at a bag of tato. Bag of tato was less than 10 pence.
Yeah.
It's nearly €1 now, like. It's up tenfold. Meat hasn't gone that way. You go in and buy a kilo. Same with fish. It's the same price. And what they're doing now is very, very simple. They explain this. People say, well, how are they managing this? And they're packaging it as Irish, and they're selling it back to you. And they're saying, we're keeping the cost of living down. But in return, they're destroying our indigenous industries and our communities that are depending on them. And then they're wondering why things are happening. And this is why it's happening. It's very simple mathematics, our economy. And this is what scares me now going forward, is because once we lose the skill set of these people that have learned this for generations, who's going to replace them? Who's going to step into the breach? These boats took a lifetime to pay for and gather and build. They won't be replaced overnight, not by Irish people. And I explained that to somebody on the pier, this young lad. He says, God, you're giving out now, and I'm in the fishing industry and everything else, and you're not talking up the industry. I said, I'll ask you a question. Say you want to sell the boat tomorrow morning, right? And you're after putting 6 years of your life into it now. He was 32. I said, you start at 26 and who'd buy the boat off you tomorrow? And he said, nobody. I said, there you go. So, like me in business, when I had an aquaculture farm, when I sold the mussels, I had thousands of mussels hanging on lines and barrels off the bay outside. My health didn't allow me to go out and bring them in. So what good were they to me? They're no good unless I put them on the pier. Somebody took them off the pier and bought them off me and paid me for them. So your wealth is, it's like saying somebody, geez, you have 1,000 acres of land there, you're a multi-millionaire. Sure, only if he sells it, and then it's gone. So, this is what's happening. We're undermining what we knew as I grew up. I don't think we're making the right moves, because everybody talks about Trump, and everybody says about what will change in international business. Well, like, if Trump decides to bring his companies home, right, the meta businesses or the data centers, and gives them a good deal to go home, what does that leave us with? The pharmaceuticals go back to Israel or to Europe, and somebody gives a better deal. And I've seen this growing up. I've seen Boland's in Cork. They had 1,000 people employed there, and Mexico gave them a better offer, and 1,000 jobs were gone overnight. This is what's happening in this. So your indigenous industry is the one that where we grow our food, and at least we can feed ourselves. Imagine if there's nobody there with the skill set to do it, or big herds, and somebody gets TB into them, and you have big farms with 1,000 cattle. This is why it's important to have the family structure businesses. I feel in Ireland, we should be protecting them. And you've seen, as you said yourselves at the ploughing match, how many people came to visit it. Like, it wasn't farmers that came there.
Exactly. Nearly a couple 100,000 every day. So it goes to show rural Ireland is still alive and kicking, and people want it to exist.
We have to apologize for the delay in the internet where, Patrick, you live in the very rural area in South Cork, and we are having storm. Is it Storm Ashley at the moment, or Storm something at the moment? So apologies for the reception. Patrick, one thing that I would absolutely say is, and what you've really touched on, is it's a family business. And family businesses go through, especially fishermen and farmers, it's all through generations passed on from one generation to the other. And all that skill set, all that knowledge, that wisdom and life experiences go through each generation, you know, and that's what we need to save. Because if the new people, we lose our fishing industry, that's all gone. And the coastal economy that you mentioned, and that is the heart and soul of all our coastal communities. And before we came on air, we talked about, you know, the family business and the women and the wives and the daughters within the family businesses and what they do. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, like when a friend goes to see Roisin, he leaves his family behind, and the wife then, obviously, he's away for the week or maybe 2 weeks, maybe even longer. So his wife, his partner, is expected to run the household, run the family business from at home, and that's stressful enough, right? Because it's an unsure industry. It's a wild. It's the last wild industry going. You know that it's a hunt and gathering. So there's no guarantee of your income, especially the regulations that are there reduces. Even though there could be a lot of one particular type of fish, because of quota system, you're not allowed to target them. You have to move to other species, and you have to juggle that. But the other side of it is this: is that it's a dangerous industry. Can you imagine kissing your partner? You know, like he's going to war. Basically, that's what a fisherman's doing. He's going to risking his life every time. Nobody wants to talk about it, but there's miles of water underneath you. You don't see anybody around you for miles, hundreds of. You mightn't see a boat for the whole 2 hours. A lot of fellas actually prefer that if they're getting fish because they don't want the competition. You know, so there's catching that. But imagine the stress of a woman.
Yeah.
You know, I met a woman at one of her protests. Cody was her name. She lost her 2 sons and her husband to fishing. Can you imagine? So she lost her family. So even after losing the husband first, the 2 lads followed in their footsteps. And then one of the sons was lost, and the other fella kept going, and he was lost in another boat. You think about Saving Private Ryan and getting the phone call and that film. There's no difference from fishing. Like this is a serious industry. So for a woman, I think they are the unsung heroes. You never hear about the wives and the partners. Even my own missus, you know, they do so much behind the back of the businesses, and they carry a way more workload. You know, some of them say to me, it's easy for you. All you do is go and get the fish, and once you come in, we do everything else. And it's true. So there's a huge pressure system on a wife when
Mm. Yeah,
I think we've lost him. He'll come back in the moment,
he,
but
he will. Yeah,
I
that's
can
definitely
just edit
something.
this one out, Paul. I can just edit
Yeah,
this.
that's definitely something that we don't think about and talk about. You know, the pressure that farm and fishing, they are family businesses, and fishermen's case, it is very much like they're going to war, they're going out in all kinds of weather, and you know,
And we
like
don't take into
actually on
account,
the night like tonight. Oh God, scary.
you know, we don't take into account, Paul, is that it's small family businesses. And that
Mm,
is what, you know, has the media and has
mm,
the whole like we the consumers, how we become complacent in this,
yeah,
how we've just become, oh, the fishermen. We need to really go back and to really realize where our food from farm to farm
yeah,
fork to
absolutely.
table, and then we have to go, okay, where are we getting our fish from?
Yeah, yeah,
You know, who's
exactly.
catching the fish? Who are the small local family business who is behind our fish that we are
Yeah,
eating at our kitchen table, or if we go out for a meal? Another
mm,
thing is, Paul, you and I both went down to the fishing expo in Limerick.
yeah. Back in March, yeah, that was brilliant.
You and I were both astounded at the amount of small family-run fishing industries that there was. We were astounded.
Oh yeah, everything from making nets to equipment to there was a company that they do filming on in
Yeah.
the sea and stuff like that. So
And
it's a massive
the
what technology.
technology.
It's like going in and looking at the Starship Enterprise.
We
You know?
have you back, Patrick.
I'm back. I don't know, can you hear me?
It's like
Ah, yeah.
Star Wars here. I'm back. You zoom
Yeah.
back in
So
again.
just to continue the conversation on the families and stuff like that, if you can hear me,
Yeah.
I really want to get this message out. We're calling on our politicians, both in Europe and at home, to call out the actions of the Norwegians, the UK, and the Faroes. And we believe that the agreement that was agreed in 2014, which allowed these countries to come into our waters and catch such huge volumes of fish, was contingent on the agreement and on other coastal stocks, right? Which is mackerel. And because it's in such jeopardy, we're asking for our minister not just to go over and raise this in Europe, but actually raise it and say that the common fishery policy and all the agreements need to be viewed in such a manner that if these countries are not going to abide by the ICES advice, then they should be told you're not coming into our waters. I think that they should be told out. So this is going to be international. The organizations I'm talking about now, where there's the Seafood of Ireland industries, both the processing and the catching sector, are now calling on Europe to break away from Norway and the coastal states agreements because they haven't agreed quotas. One of the meetings I was on now was their own fish stocks, the Scandinavian herring, right? And it's in
Yeah.
jeopardy. And they didn't even agree a sharing arrangement in that. They couldn't find a sharing arrangement in their own stock. So when you have that, if there's no sharing arrangement, I think they should dissolve the access. Unless there's agreement, right? You shouldn't be allowed. Let's put it this way to simple terms. If you had a referee that didn't know the rules of the game, right, or couldn't apply the rules of the game, how could he hold a football match when nobody
Yeah.
agreed with the rule and there was no sanctions there? So I believe in that instance, you don't take the pitch. So I believe that's what we should do as a country to protect our rights. We have the richest waters in Europe, yet everybody else is coming in taking 85% of the fish. We're left with 15%, and it's putting our people out of business. And then in their own waters, they're taking even more, and we're getting even less, to such an extent that if they keep taking what they're doing, they'll destroy the stocks. And this is what I've asked for. But we know from my question to ICES this year. So I'm at the meeting. The ICES presenting the advice is at the meeting. And I asked a simple question on behalf of Ireland and Europe. If the 22% cut doesn't include the additional fish stocks that are being taken above what they said, what will be the outcome? And she wouldn't answer the question, she just referred back to this, is that we are giving advice.
No.
Fish
Apologies, folks.
saying that. No.
Patrick, we lost you at we are giving advice. We lost you
So
when you,
we're giving advice. Yeah. So we're giving advice that the 22% reduction, if that doesn't incorporate the full catch limit. In other words, there's no point in saying we're going to cut 22% if you're going to exceed the whole quota. So let me break it down in figures. They're saying that the maximum catch should be 500,000 tons, right? So they've reduced it from 600,000. Okay?
Yeah.
But if Norway take an extra 50 and England take an extra 20 or 30 and Faroes take another 20 or 30, then it's back up to the 600,000. And the ICES advice doesn't take that into their calculations. They've only calculated it at 500 tons. So that means there's still an additional 20% being taken from the stock, and that will drive it below BLIM. So on that instance, if they take extra fish, they shouldn't be allowed to fish in Irish waters. If they don't reach a sharing arrangement that's legally binding, then they should be told, well, no agreement stands. Stay out of our waters. If you don't have an agreement in mackerel, then there's no agreement in herring, then there's no agreement in blue whiting. Go back and fish in your own waters and stay out of European waters. And we'll do the same. We'll stay out of yours. Now, For us as a country, Ireland, this is easy enough because, as I said, we catch very little up there. But the Danes and the Swedes and other countries in Germany and countries with historic rights, even Spain catches more fish in Norway than we do. So those countries will want to keep the arrangement because it'll hurt them more. But they're not fishing in their waters.
Yeah.
They're fishing in Irish waters. And then we're the patsy to pay for this price. And the Irish people should understand this is the exact same thing that happened to your ancestors when the English invaded us. They took the rights from the Irish people and they gave it to everybody else, and they planted the country. Well, these countries are a plantation of our waters, and our ministers and our government are standing idly by, and hopefully our MEPs are listening to us, that they won't. And they should be saying that this cannot continue. We are withdrawing from the common fishery policy. We are stopping all boats from coming into our waters until the stocks recover. The UNICLOS laws are going to apply rather than the common fishery ones. And we'll police and we'll look after our own boats and just kick everybody out if they don't agree to a proper sharing arrangement. That's what we're asking people in this country to back us to call for, to protect the fishing grounds. The NGOs should be screaming this from the rooftops, but obviously the smallest player in Irish waters than anybody else.
Patrick, I want to bring back, because you were saying that, you know, all this, and it's what you met Maira Wash, the MEP. What did she say, and what was the outcome of that meeting?
She actually put up a post online about it, that she listened to the fishermen and she agrees that we're in peril. For the first time, a major politician, an MEP, would have said that she understood what was happening and that this couldn't continue because we can't continue. We're going out of business. So our minister isn't agreeing with that, even though she's in a government with him. She's Fine Gael. We met 9 other MEPs and not one of them disagreed with us. And even Sean Kelly, who wouldn't be a great advocate of the fishing industry, said when he was asked, when I had my explanation of where we are, he said, look, Patrick, you've explained it really succinctly. You've made it very simple for us to understand. And he said, I would recommend you coming out with this catchphrase, which you coined yourself. Isn't it amazing that Ireland, with the richest fishing grounds in Europe, will end up with the poorest fishermen? That's the truth. So, you know, we see the SFPA, the Sea Fishery Protection Agency, who does all the inspecting of the boats and the landings, came out with a report. And they tried to, as I said, manipulate the report to sound like ash or everything's grand in Ireland. The fishermen are just complaining, they're always the same and they're the bad guys and we need to control them. And they've said this in their publications, like they make the biggest deal out of the smallest incidents when it comes to the Irish fishermen. But when we dug into the statistics that they themselves put out in the report, a damning statistic of the landings was this. When you averaged out the amount of landings and the amount of boats that were doing those landings, an Irish boat was averaging 3 ton per landing. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. One Irish boat was on average landing 3 ton between them all. The foreign boats between them all were landing 43 ton per landing. So they were filling 2 Arctic loads on average, and it was taking us 14 to 15 boats landing to fill the same 2 Arctics in our own waters. So this is what's actually happening in our waters. This is why the common fishery policy is crucifying us. Now, remember, you have a legal obligation to stay within your quotas, and they're able to land 43 ton on average, and yet ours on average are meant to make a living out of 3 ton on average. So this is what we're talking about. It depends on how you actually look at the figures, like I said with the BIM report. So that would tell you, right? Just like I've been saying for a long, long time, we don't seem to be protected by those that are employed to protect us. We seem to be the ones that are victimized and vilified and told that we're wrong. So just to give you another quote, When the Coastal States Agreement, again, the plenary I was on, I'm not allowed to contribute, right? Because I'm in the periphery. I'm a member of the European Union, but I'm not a representative of the negotiating team. But we do get to put a comment up in the chat. So the first two meetings, they'd never read out my comments, but they were there for others to see, right? So at least I got my message across. But at the last meeting, at my last comment, because it was such a pertinent question to the meeting that was going on, one of the people from the European Union asked that the question be put to the ISIS scientist. And then the secretariat said, well, who's asking the question? Because they could see I wasn't entitled to ask the question. But they adopted the question, my question, and they asked it anyway. And the question was very simple. If the advice and the information that they have now accepted into the advice that changed the outcome of the advice proved not to be quantitative, in other words, that it was unreliable and proved to be false next year or wrong, how would that change next year's advice? And they wouldn't answer it because they knew that if they used what I had said in their advice, the precautionary approach, they wouldn't have been giving an increase. They would have been giving a reduction. But because it was politicized and Russia had come in with additional advice to suit the narrative for the Norwegians, they adopted it. And that's the truth. So that was the first one. And the second one, then the comment was very simple. I said it's a shame, it's an actual embarrassment to be at a meeting where all these top negotiating people couldn't reach an advice, and therefore there was no sharing arrangement. And what was going to happen then in the outcome is that the fishermen themselves, who were doing as they were told and instructed, would be the ones vilified for the overfishing or for the stock to collapse, because they are doing what they were asked to do, which is catch the fish in the quantities that they were legally told to catch, which could be detrimental to the stocks. So if the stocks collapsed the next time, then the scientists would blame who? The fishermen for overfishing. Yet it was they who didn't get the agreements right to make sure that the stock was protected by limiting the amount fishermen could catch. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah.
It's always blame. There's no accountability. There's no responsibility. It's just the blame game, and it's the little people that suffer. And here again, Ireland is suffering.
Yeah, but the millions, Roisin, just like the bicycle shed that's being spent by these people going to meetings and not having outcomes. If that was a private individual, if that was a private company, those people would lose their jobs. They wouldn't be allowed to do it time and time again and keep wasting the company's money. But this is money they're wasting. Not mine. Well, it is my money. It's your money. It's everybody in Europe's money. And the fishermen then are told that they're the ones that are wrong. So you've got the administrators coming in. And we see this right across society, that administrators are coming in. We see it in our health services. We see it in the ambulance services. And these people are brought in to push paper and try and fix the problem and ask the person who's actually doing the work to do more for less and to work longer hours. And then they get in trouble with the likes of the WRC and work hours relations. And then what they're told is, well, park up the ambulances. Well, you know, we don't have, you can't put these people out to work. So then your capital investment, which is your ambulances and everything else, is there. And then there's no services. Or you go to a hospital and there's 5 or 6 of them parked up outside because the lads have run out of hours and they can't move. An easy way of describing this, and I think people who fly will understand this if they've ever been caught. They might be sitting on the tarmac for an hour or two, and next thing the pilot comes over the airways. Well, we couldn't get clearance to fly. Sorry, we're now going to leave the plane and the staff because we've passed our allowable hours, and we'll see you tomorrow. That has happened, you know. So but that's what's happening all the time now in fisheries and the negotiations. Sorry, we had a great meeting. It was lovely, so pleasant. You were so kind. And I'm not joking, you know, this is what they be telling each other. And we're all mad to get sustainability. We're all mad to protect the stocks. We're all really invested in this, and our fishermen invested. Well, but we can't reach agreement. So, you know, what harm? Away we go. And And this is the madness that continues. And then me and my colleagues trying to keep our boats earning enough money to go out catch fish. And if they land 2 or 3 boxes of fish over and above, they're criminals. Genuinely, like, criminalized. Dragged into the courts, fined thousands of euros, gear compensated. And the people that are policing them are earning double, if not triple, what a fisherman gets to go to sea and risk his life in the calendar year. So the system is completely broken, like,
And
and
Patrick,
the man that's
just
doing the job, you
right,
know,
just from a practical, if say they do push that extra box, what happens to that fish? Do they just have to give it away or dispose it, or um, what happens there? Just from a practical point of view, as I can see the
in other
picture of
countries,
them. Oh, sugar, we've more
yeah,
than one.
in other countries that fish,
We
yeah.
give it to them, or do we throw it out, or whatever? Like, whereas as you see trawlers coming into Castlebar and they're cleaning the place out. Like,
So there's 2 ways that happens. Is at first the fisherman buys the fish back, pays a bond for to get the fish, and then sells it onto the marketplace. And then they try and cover their costs that way, but they have to pay the bond. So basically, the government is saying, well, like, we'll give you the fish back, you sell it, and then you pay us. So they don't even have the trouble of selling the fish. And the fisherman pays the buyer then and all the rest of the costs and tries to break even. And if they're short, then they have to top them up. Listen, if you've seen this in a Western or something like that, like you say, it was a great scam by the guys that are doing it. Like, or you see a fellow with a speed gun on the side of the road. This is what's happening. And like, people criticize, you can't say this, you can't say that. I tell the truth, like, as I see it, and I don't care whether I'm called out or not. And the only people that hold me to account are my directors. But I tell you, other countries, I know, Russian, you're meant to get in here, I can see it, so I'll let you in. So continue on. In other countries, what they do is, say if you've 2 or 3 boxes over, they'll take those 2 or 3 individual boxes over, they will confiscate them. They will either give them to the local communities or the charities, or they'll sell them and put it into the coffers of the local communities, which is a more reasonable one. And then they'll fine or penalize the fishermen appropriately, but not in this country. In this country, genuinely, it's a way worse. But that's a longer conversation that I can have with you anytime. And I'm not saying this, I can prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, this is like faulty towers and the fishermen and the faulty towers. You wouldn't believe it if we weren't talking to you. And we've been, I think, a year now. We met you nearly a year ago or a year ago now.
yeah, that's
And
former.
yeah, I think you're getting feedback from me, are you? Is there what is it that our politicians
No, I'm
can
fine.
do, and how can they do it to actually help save our fishermen and make our Irish fisheries prosperous again, and our local communities and our local coastal communities? And how can we make our fish more where we know if we're buying fish, we're buying Irish fish caught by Irish fishermen and contributing to the local economy?
So I'll give you an example again, and people might rewind if they want to. I spoke about the horse mackerel, right? It's a cousin to mackerel. It's a spiny fish, right? But it's a lovely fish to eat, right? And it's even more liked in the European countries than it is here. And it's a huge fish in Africa. They really depend on it, right? So 800,000 tons. So the 2 years that it's been down, it's back now, Roisin, and there's a 75,000 quota. 75,000 tons can now be caught in 2025. So that's how easy and how fast the fish can recover, given half a chance. They were still catching 20,000 ton of it in the bycatch figures because you have to keep the science going. So even though there's a zero catch advice. So what the politicians can do, they can stand up for Ireland. It's as simple as that. If there was people coming into your fields, right, and taking your cattle or digging up your crops and your spuds, the politicians wouldn't ignore it. They wouldn't let it go. They would fight for us. But sure, they're ignoring it in the fishing industry. So what can they do? Speak up for us. Tell Europe the policy you introduced in Europe is not working for the Irish people. You're wiping us out. You're taking our livelihoods, our heritage off us. You're doing what the British did when they invaded with Cromwell and took the land off us. There
Right.
is no difference. People have to understand what I'm saying is true. And if they want the evidence of what I'm saying, right, go to the coastal towns and villages. And where there was once a thriving fishing fleet, they're gone. And it isn't because those communities caught the fish. They were doing it for 100 years and more. It's the countries that were allowed access into our waters to take huge quantities of fish that have done the damage and are continuing to do the damage. And again, don't have to believe me. Look at BIM's report and see the actual recorded landings, like I said, of foreign boats into our biggest whitefish port, which is Castletown Bay. And they're landing hundreds of thousands of tons of fish in comparison to us. And in Killybegs, it's the opposite because of the control measures that are being forced. No boat will land in Ireland from other countries because it's too strict. They don't get put through the ringer, or the laws aren't interpreted the same way as our guys are interpreting it and crucifying the fishermen. In certain aspects now, you can find other fish to stop. But it depends on the size of the boat or who you are or who the minister likes. I think that'll be a big story that'll be coming out hopefully soon. We've put it out in 3 of the publications for our fishermen. It'll be in the Skipper, it'll be in the Marine Times, and it'll be in the Fishing Daily. But I don't think any mainstream media will pick it up because they're being told the fishermen are the bad guys. They're being told that fishermen are always whinging, and no matter what they get, they're never satisfied. Yet
But they
fishermen
said that about the farmers
are,
as
as I
well.
said, yeah.
They
But sure,
said that, but
there was a
about the
thing on
farmers.
TikTok, right? Yeah, there's this lad now that went through the data and he put up a TikTok post. And the only industry that's on target for carbon footprint and for reducing their carbon is farmers. And it's in the reports. Yet Lee, what's his name? The fella that was a politician that's in RT, Lee, what's his name?
George Lake. George Lake.
George Lee put out a post and put out a thing that farmers are the ones way off their targets. They're not. If you look up the databases that this man looked up, they're on target. They're reducing. There's 80,000 less cattle in Ireland. The dairymen are reducing. The meat producers are reducing. There's no money in it. So they're going out of business. They're being forced out of business. And small farms are being bought up and you're losing family farms. Like, look around you. If you're in the country, look at your neighbours. Look at the farmers that were there before and going to the market and everything else and their youngsters. None of them are staying there. There's nobody taking over the family business. You're going to have the same in Europe. You'll be consolidating. And people might want that. That's for me, it's crazy. I smile when I say this. Why did you destroy your infrastructure?
And
I'll give another example to people. I'm very simple. Let me just say this to you. If you go back and get the old maps and look at the Irish rail network of Ireland, right, in, I suppose, the 50s and the 60s, there was a train running to every corner of the country. We're the only country in the world that pulled it up. And now we're talking about putting down the rail network, like I told you, out to the Dublin airport, or hospital above, the Children's Hospital. We have people making decisions in this country continuously that don't seem to make sense. I mean, we keep doing it. I just, and as I said, open your eyes, people. It's all around you. It's everywhere. It's the way we seem to be living it, accepting it, and the way that we're being told.
And Patrick, I think it was Nina Carberry, who's a Fine Gael MEP as well. I think she said something that it would be good to have a junior ministry for fisheries, and I know Independent Ireland have that in their manifesto. Do you think that would be a good idea, or would that just be pure window dressing?
No, I think it's necessary. I think that we're in such trouble. Like you had ministers for horse racing, dogs, and sports and stuff like that. Like, junior ministers. You had a minister for forestry, even though she did nothing, only make a mess of it. But yeah, so like, of course, there should be a minister for marine. We're putting billions of euros around our coastline. That's under the Department of Housing. And they've done a great job in the housing, and yet they're in charge of the marine spatial planning. Like if you were, I'll explain it to you this way, Paul, and I was told this by a councillor. The further away you are from the sea when you're elected, you're more likely to get a job on the committee for coastal development. The further away you are from the city, the more likely you are to get a job inside on one of the committees for the council inside the Cork. And it's easily explained. It's called mileage. So you get money for traveling and expenses to going to the meetings. So the further you travel, the more money you get. And that's a known fact. So, but then you're not putting the person that has the expertise on the committee. You're not asking somebody from the city to come in and tell you about rural life, and you're asking somebody from rural life to go in and tell you about inside the city. Look, maybe there are people with expensive knowledge and they know it all. Maybe people would be accusing me of that as well too at times. But I just find this crazy. Now, I am the what would you say, the exception to the rule, because I'm a fisherman. And fishermen have chosen a fisherman to represent them, funny enough. And
That's natural.
so I don't see it as a job. I see it as a requirement that, for my future generations, my sons, my daughters, my coastal community, I want the same opportunities for the next generation of Irish men and women as I had growing up. And they were tough. Jeez, we got nothing easy. And it doesn't seem to be there. We've gone backwards. How is that possible? When, as I said, we have the richest fishing grounds in Europe.
Crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Patrick, do you think then, from your opinion, and I think it's common sense, this answer, is really the local county councillors all over inland Ireland, do they have any kind of awareness or knowledge or information or even an interest in what is happening on the coastal communities around Ireland?
Absolutely not. No, I'm sure you had your councillor on that I said, and he blamed the fishermen without talking to a fisherman, without talking to a fisherman's organisation. Like that's unheard of. Genuinely, like that is unbelievable. Like to go on data that you have no clue about and you couldn't even ask the experts, like, and you come out making statements as a politician showing that you weren't well versed. No, not a hope, Roisin. Listen, I meet these politicians, and in fairness now, I must say the 10 politicians we met in Europe, it was the first time that they listened, but I know that there's people working against us inside the department and the agencies that are there. They don't believe that the industry is in the trouble that it's in. We have agencies, and they'll tell you outright that don't worry about the processing. We'll get the fish from the other fishermen and we'll process it here. They spent millions on it to try and bring it in. But what that does, it undermines your own fishermen. You're bringing in products from other places to create a competition with your own people. Like, it wouldn't happen anywhere else. It genuinely wouldn't in any other business. It'd be like some fella like, that was in charge of forestry, right? The Pippa Hackett. And she importing trees from other countries to compete with the forestry here. Or say, well, don't worry about the lads here now, they can make a living. We'll bring in the trees. And like you might think, sure, that's mad, that would never happen. Look at the peat, look at the horticulture, look at the turf, there, look at the sugar.
Yeah.
Look at the fertilizer.
Look at the beef.
It's happening. Look at the beef. It's like people have to understand that this is what's happening. And there is a reason behind it, like, I don't agree with their reasoning. Their reasoning is that inflation will go up. Ergo, they'll have to pay more money to the private sector workers through wage increases, I'm saying, but definitely they'll have to pay them to the public sector. because they'll be looking for more money. And they just find that too much of a headache. Price of a house, lads, when I grew up, when I came together with Rose, it was 50,000. Imagine, a house inside the Green was 50,000. Now they're saying an affordable house is 400,000. When the price of my wages back then was probably 150 euros a week. Price of the average wage now is 600 or 700. Do you know what I mean? So 50,000 on 150 euros or pounds a week. Price of a pint was under £1. Price of a house now on 600 or 700 euros is 400,000 is an affordable house. And you know, and they're talking about putting up modular units for 430 and 440,000 a pop. You know, when are people going to say that there's something not right here? You know, and the billions that are being wasted in the country, like, and each individual person in this country. I'm not running now. I'm out of politics, but I will keep saying this: there is no point in saying, this is wrong, when you can do something about it.
Yes.
Don't vote for the same people that are doing this. And if I said this before, and it's right, and it is the way it should be done. If you join a political party and they have a political ideology, you're not allowed to go in and destroy that on your own or whatever. You go to the Ardfish and you put your proposals forward and they either adopt it. And then you either stay in or you don't. So the next candidate that comes in will have to follow the philosophy of that party. But that philosophy of that party will not change if you keep putting those people in, because they'll take it as a mandate. So if you keep voting for the same people or the same type of politics, you're going to get the same results. You have to take a chance in one election to shake the foundations of the political, not the state, because everybody will tell you the permanent government are your civil servants, so that you're not going to destroy your country, but you will shake it up. You will get politicians that might go back to the old way and take more of a control and be able to say more. Not like, you know, you've seen politicians, well, that wasn't my area of expertise. And I agree that was a terrible thing to happen. And that was terrible. But by God, it doesn't have to be their area of expertise. When there's a positive on it, or there's a positive spin, it's suddenly their collective and how great they are in a political party or whatever else, like, do you know? So when you hear the likes of that, putting their tick behind their name in the ballot box, you're not voting for honesty. You're voting for somebody that'll say anything when it suits them, and you will suffer as a result. So this is what I'd say in the meetings that are there. If you look at your society and you're not happy with the society, then you have a chance to change it at the ballot box. But you'll have to make that decision, no matter what your history or how you were reared and who you don't like. For once, I would love to see this country doing something different and putting in some different, just ideology thinking, and it's only for a short period of time. So, but I would be putting my own foot forward to these people while they're there. That's my job. And if they don't, then I call it out. If they do, I will applaud them. I will say, no, this is a person that needs. I've changed my mind about Maira Wash, right? I spoke to that lady and that MEP in the previous Parliament, and she did not know about fishing. I genuinely am saying this. I don't think she had an interest. I never heard from her. She didn't contact me. She didn't reach out to me. But this time she listened. And because she has a connection now in the industry, and because she knows the commissioner, she has now become a very, very important politician. But only if she acts, only if she listens, only if she'll come and hear the story from us, only if she'll be well versed and listen to the people that she says she's representing. She's not representing the Department of Marine. She's not representing BIM. She's not representing the SFPA. They are separate. They have their own entities. Who she is meant to represent, in my view, are the people that depend on her, who voted for her, which be the fishing communities and the coastal communities and the people of Ireland that want to fish or want to have their own resources and their own wealth, which they're entitled to off their coastline, and to stand up for us in Europe to protect that. The rest of it is superfluous as far as I'm concerned. You know, yeah, there's other people working in those agencies, but their job is there anyway. You know, BIM will be there, so will the SFPA. I can't see them getting put out of a job, but you will lose your fishing industry. Now, those
and
people
that's what we're
might be
worried about.
working in the Department of Marine. Yeah, but you see, they have their permanent jobs. They are state employees. They will be moved on somewhere else, or they'll retire, and they're sorted. They genuinely are. They can't lose. They will be looked after once you're a civil servant. But a fishing family or a coastal community or the town that depends on it, when they're gone, they will hurt the coastal communities. They will hurt the families. There is an immediate impact, and it is going to destroy those people's lives if she doesn't represent them. And come and talk to us. As I said, don't make it complicated. We're surrounded by water. Every country in Europe would give the right teeth to get into our waters to catch the fish here. Every one of them. Norway is fighting like lions, like demons, to get into Irish waters to catch the fish here to keep their coastal communities going. This fish is in our waters, it's ours. And we need to protect that. And if you protect that, you know, to me, it doesn't make sense not to. It makes perfect sense to do it. But maybe you can tell me yourselves, you're listening to me long enough. Am I off track? Am I saying something?
I think common sense is what we need back into politics and to running Ireland. We need common sense back into our food production, and where and how we source our food and who we source it from. We need common sense back into pricing and making sure that our farmers and our fisheries and our small local businesses and we, the consumers, all have a fair deal, and that everyone can afford to actually live. That's all anyone's looking for, is to actually have a living. Now, we're running out of time, Patrick, but you know, you've met Maria Walsh.
Can I interrupt you?
You can.
Roisin, I'm just going to say something. Okay, so if you want to see, I put stuff up on Facebook. I was actually out of the country for a few days with my wife. It was a date that my wife asked me to leave. It's around the birthday, right? So we were in Spain, and we happened to be in Alicante on a day's excursion. So we went down around the piers and looking at all the rich yachts, and I obviously interested in the water. And I walked past one of these restaurants. Okay. So I spoke to you about Norway coming in, catching 214,000 tons, right? 14 actually, 224 in our waters. They catch another 100,000 tons around or outside our 200 mile zone, I believe, right? So we'll round it off at 300,000. Okay. Well, a plate of fish, and it wouldn't even be a kilo. We'll say, look, you got a kilo blue whiting, was 20 euros. That's what it was for a fish, 20 euros. So just think of that, 1 kilo. So that would be 20,000 a ton. So 20,000 by 300,000. Is that 60 million? Or is it more? Is it, or is it 600?
Yeah, money,
just a lot of money, lads, right? And we get a fifth of that for our entire country. So that's one country coming in, taking that wealth from us. So maybe a calculator, 300,000 by 20,000. 1,000 is a million.
Wow.
I think it's 600 million, if I'm correct.
So Patrick, will you be meeting Maria Walsh again, or Sean Kelly again?
So we're hoping to bring the fishermen out the next time. So we were the representatives. I would like them to talk to individual operators in our fleet to tell them their own personal stories and the challenges that they face and what the politicians should and could be doing for them. And should and could. We're not asking them to do something that's impossible. We only want them to speak for us. We don't ask them to risk their lives like the fishermen do and go to sea and go out in the boats. We just want them to stand up, listen to what we have to say, We'll provide the evidence, we'll provide the proof that we won't be telling lies, we won't be exaggerating it, and these people will tell their stories with the figures that are there, the real figures. And we want our politicians to stand up, and we want them to look at the legislation and the laws in Europe to say, is this going to continue? What will be the outcome from Ireland and the Irish people? And as I said, and the proof is there. Again, I'll keep saying this on your show as long as I'm allowed to say it. 400 votes in 2004, 140 in 24. That's where we're going. So that means in 20 years' time, we won't have a fishing fleet. And that's the truth. We just won't. It'll be gone. And these people have 5 years now in Brussels to do something for us. And either that, go back to the colony times and try and get it back after that. The only way you get it back after that is leave Europe. And I couldn't see that happening. I don't think that would be a wise thing to do for
Well,
Ireland, though. I think it'd be madness.
what we're going to do then, Patrick, is we are going to reach out to Maira Wash and see if she'll come on with yourself and talk about this. So we'll put a call out to her and see if somehow between you and Patrick O'Neill and all your fishermen and everything else, if we can make Irish fisheries great again here in Ireland, and see if we can really just get people to listen. And maybe if we put on an event here in Kilkenny, maybe you might come up and join us.
Yeah, I'm going to Hamburg now for the General Assembly for the European Producers Organizations. So there's a big gathering of us there, and we go through what we try and influence as a group in Europe and lobby and give a stronger voice. And we put advice together and we put sensible proposals there. So that's on now from the 23rd, 25th. And then the December Council is on the 9th and 10th. Where all the ministers meet, and after meeting with the UK and the bilaterals. So like the minister put forward the SIA to the government and to the parliament, and we contributed to that. But look, I'd be delighted to talk to anybody, because I really would hope that people would listen and really take on board. I tried it in the European elections. Some people said I did well. I don't think so. I think that I could have done a lot better. I would do things a hell of a lot different if I went back in time again. And I would have gone with more of my gut instincts rather than my brain, which made reasoned decisions that didn't work out. But anyway, sure, look, we live and learn. I'm not looking for politics again, lads. I hope people won't be disappointed. I know 14,000 people thought I was the man to go out there, and I got another 3,000 in carryovers, maybe if I small party, very low on finances, taking on the big boys, no media coverage, so to speak, no mainstream anyway, definitely not. And I suppose it was a good showing, but no, I told my family that unless I got a better result, I wouldn't go. And the people I'm representing feel that it didn't bode well for them, and talking to our government parties and stuff, they kind of shied away from us. I can understand it. I don't agree with it for a second, by the way. But yeah, you know, I can understand it. And their reservations, as in, if you're a political, then you might get to talk to people. But if you are political and have a stance, then it's harder for other people with different views and political to look at you and say, well, you're bringing him into the tent, and he could hurt you. So I'm staying out of politics now while I'm in the job in the Southwest for the next 5 years. And please, God, that we try and change things in this current European Parliament. And somebody in there might do the job that I was hoping to do myself, if they'd listen. So I'd appreciate that, absolutely. If Maria wanted to go on and give her a platform.
Yeah. And Patrick, will you give us regular updates on what you're doing and what where things are within the Irish fisheries going forward as well?
Yeah, look, at the moment, Roisin, it's very bad. You've storms out there now and lads can't make a living. We so to give you a positive what we do, and I said this to the minister on the call, I did a business transaction with another producer organization who are very good to us, a UK one, the English Southern producer organisation. We got, I'd say, 4 to 5 million worth of fish, and we gave them maybe 500,000. And you'd be saying, well, why would they be so generous? Maybe it's down to my skill set as a negotiator, I don't know. But that's really critical for us, because if we didn't get that fish in a trade, we wouldn't have that fish. So December would be finished. We would have no fish for the fishermen in December. So that's where the producer organizations actually roll up their sleeves and get in and negotiate where maybe our administrators can't, because we have to drive a better deal. Whereas if country to country are doing it, then it's a 1-for-1. So if you give them 1,000, they get 1,000 back. Do you know what I mean? They can't be seen to favour the deals. Whereas in the private sector we are in, we can negotiate with the others. And people say, well, why are they so generous? They have so much fish, they can't catch it in the calendar year, right? But the ones that they want, they can. So the way they look at it is that, well, 500,000 worth of fish is better in our pockets than 5 million fish in paper. It's no good to us.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick Murphy,
But it's good to the Irish, because we catch that fish. And I'm not the only one.
We keep overlapping one another. I think it must be the storm and the internet, so my apologies for that. Patrick, we've run out of time, but I know personally I would like to thank you, and I know Paul and the Irish Political Roundup
100%.
and the Confident Women Island YouTube channel in everything that you're doing for the Irish fisheries, for the Irish fishermen, for the Irish coastal local economy and the local businesses and the local people, and for helping and what you do in putting fish on our plates here at home and in restaurants. Thank you so much. You know, from the moment we met you down here in Castlecomer, in Kilkenny, I was like, oh my God, we have to do something about the fisheries from that night on, and we still have continued a year later. It's something that we will continue to do and support our Irish fishermen. And we will reach out to Maira Walsh. And I actually think Maira Walsh, along with Padar Tabine, was the only other politician to actually talk about human trafficking as well. So
yeah, and that's a serious issue. And we've seen children, I don't know, is it real or not? It's so convoluted now inside the media, like that it doesn't seem to be given the priority it deserves.
No.
You know, like there's children going missing, and you see it up, I know, it's social media. Why isn't the mainstream media picking this up? Why, you know, you see in other countries, you see it on the mink cartons and everything. You're starting to question, because they challenge so much the social media, right? And they say, well, you can't trust the social media, you know, then you don't trust it
media.
Genuinely, you know, like, you know, I look at yourself and everything else. Yeah, but like, so that human trafficking and stuff like that, I don't understand why the mainstream media aren't covering it more if they want to be the credible source, because it's real serious, and children going missing. Then again, you see, I question this. If one of my daughters or one of my sons went missing or something happened to them, I'd be all over the place. Like, I would be outside Donnybrook. I would be saying, why aren't you saying this? So that I question that as well. Are the parents being curtailed? Are they being stopped? You know, the child that got stabbed above, if that was there anybody else, you would be getting updates. Those people would be interviewed. They'd be talking about what happened. Do you know what I mean? Why aren't the media covering that? I find it incredible that they're not.
We were tier 2 of the American watch list for child trafficking here in Ireland, and then because of COVID and the COVID restrictions, however, the airports, the ports and the borders were all kept open. We were taken off the tier 2 watch list. So it's something that we need to really get back out there, like the fisheries, and get people talking about, is the fisheries and the child trafficking here in Ireland. Patrick, we love having you on. You talk common sense, you talk common decency, and you talk facts, and you can back up everything that you say. And you're talking, and you're passionate, and you are working in representing the people of Ireland and our food industry. So, and you are a really nice guy too. And Paul has gone down to where you live and met you.
I've been down there, yeah. I got Great hospitality.
So, Patrick Murphy, thank you for everything that you're doing, and thank all the fishermen, their families, and the communities for being so brave and courageous for ensuring that we have fish here in Ireland.
Thanks,
so-
Roisin, and thanks, Paul. And look,
Very welcome.
I know the storm is playing havoc with us this evening, but
I know.
we can do it again. There's no problem.
We will always do it again,
Especially
Patrick.
if it's on the weekends, I do get a bit of time to do it then.
Patrick, we will always have an interest
Perfect.
in the fisheries, and that's down. And thank you to you.
100%.